Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're going to be talking about contingency recruiting, when you should use it, and discuss some pros and cons.
So, what exactly is contingency recruiting?
Contingency recruiting, at its most simple form, is recruiting that happens when the client doesn't pay in advance. It's when the recruiting firm essentially takes the burden and the risk of going through the recruiting process prior to sending an invoice to a client or without any guarantee they're actually going to be paid for the effort. The alternative to contingency recruiting is retained recruiting. And retained recruiting is it's where a portion of the fee, typically around 30%, is paid to the recruiting firm to initiate their search. And then there's contract staffing. It's also a form of contingency recruiting where the candidate who's hired is an employee of the contract staffing company while they're working at the client.
Let's talk about how contingency recruiting works. There's a couple steps. The client, the company who is hiring for the job, is going to provide the job description to the recruiter, the third party agency. There's going to be a master agreement or a contract that is signed between the two companies. Then the recruiter for the agency is going to work on sourcing and qualifying these candidates. They're going to go through phone screenings, maybe some Zoom interviews to make sure that they're the right fit for the job. Once the candidate is identified by the recruiter is going to present them to the company that is hiring for the job. They're going to go through interviews, maybe multi-step interviews. Once that candidate that is decided on as being the right one for the job, the offer is going to be made. And then a lot of times for contingency recruiting, there's going to be a guarantee period, whether it's 30, 60, I've even seen 90-day guarantee periods that the candidate has to work before the recruiter at the agency is paid and gets to take home that fee.
So, in any business arrangement, we always have to talk about money. And in contingency recruiting, there's a fee that's paid after the candidate is placed. There's a wide range of possibilities there, and there's lots of options and flexibility that could be applied. But generally speaking, those fees are between 20 and 30% of the hired candidate's annual salary.
So let's talk about some of the advantages of contingency recruiting. First off, it's cost effective. You're paying only when you get a successful hire. You're not spending money just trying to get candidates. And because of that, you're getting motivated recruiters. These agencies, they only get paid if they find the best candidate that you are going to hire. So that's really a great advantage because recruiters who are working in these areas, who are specializing, you're going to get an expanded reach, access to a wider talent pool than you might have just on your own because they have probably hired for a lot of these roles and they work for different companies. These recruiters are experts in their fields. Finally, they are working on a timeline. They want to get you the right candidate as quickly as possible. So speed is going to be a huge advantage of this style of recruiting.
And the biggest disadvantage of contingency recruiting is the recruiting firm, because they're working for free, you may not get their best or certainly not a dedicated effort. Recruiting firms that work on contingency generally will spend their time where they have the best chance of earning revenue. And so that's always something to keep in mind on this versus a retained search. If you're asking someone to work for free, you sometimes get what you pay for, but it is a very prevalent way of working. So it's usually not too much of a risk.
Pete, what's the best time to use contingency recruiting and who is somebody who should be using it?
There's a lot of times when contingency recruiting is a great option. Generally speaking, it's when the position that's being hired for isn't too extreme. If it's an executive level position, a very senior position, or a niche position, probably don't want to go through a contingency recruiting search there because the recruiting firm is going to be faced with too much time and effort to work for free on the front end. And that's really when a retained search should come into play. Or another great time to use contingency recruiting is when there's consistency involved. Consistency of the type of position you hire for, consistency of relationship with the recruiting firm, where everyone's really comfortable with the process and it can flow efficiently. So, pros and cons for sure, but contingent recruiting is very prevalent in the marketplace and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. Hope this helped. Thanks for listening.